It was a quiet evening when the ships first appeared in the skies. People across the globe were going about their lives, children playing in the streets, workers heading home, families gathering for dinner, when suddenly the atmosphere shifted. At first, no one noticed. It wasn't unlike the movement of satellites across the heavens, barely visible but unmistakable once you focused. But this time, there was something different. 1,000 ships, their sleek surfaces gleaming in the twilight, descended from the stars. There was no panic, not immediately. It wasn't like what the movies predicted, no alien warships raining down destruction or firebombing our cities. It was serene, almost surreal. The ships didn't move with the frantic energy of an attack. Instead, they floated, hovering, as though they were waiting for us to notice. As the first ship landed in the heart of the city, its surface shimmered and rippled, and the air around it seemed to hum with a strange energy. People gathered around, their gazes fixated on the enormous craft. There was no sound at first, just the silent awe of an event humanity had dreamed of for centuries finally coming true. The arrival of extraterrestrials, something we had only imagined in books and films, was now a reality. The first contact didn't come with a battle cry or a thunderous announcement. The beings who stepped from the ships were tall, their forms both humanoid and alien, with sleek metallic armor that glowed faintly in the dim light. Their eyes were a pale silver, with an intelligence that seemed to peer through us rather than at us. They did not speak immediately, but their presence was undeniable, commanding the attention of every human nearby. They moved with purpose, their gestures calculated, their expressions unreadable. It was the moment we had been waiting for. A new chapter in human history was unfolding before our eyes, and for a brief moment, we believed that the universe was about to become our playground. The Syndar, these beings from beyond our world, spoke through a translation device, their voice resonating with authority and power. They identified themselves as the Syndar, a race whose origins stretched back beyond our comprehension, hailing from a distant galaxy. Their arrival was not just a visit, but a declaration. They had traveled across the stars, seeking to learn, to understand, and perhaps to enlighten. They called us a primitive species, though they did not say it with malice. Instead, it was a statement of fact. We were young, they told us, new to the vastness of space, only beginning to touch the surface of what was possible. The Syndar's tone was laced with awe, but also with an underlying sense of superiority. It was clear that their race had mastered technologies far beyond anything we had achieved. Their ships alone were proof of their advanced knowledge, each one capable of manipulating the very fabric of space-time. They spoke of their empires that spanned the cosmos, their civilizations that had risen and fallen over millennia, and their place as the rightful leaders of the galaxy. We listened intently, hanging on their every word, overwhelmed by the sheer scope of their achievements. They described worlds they had visited, civilizations they had encountered, and stars they had tamed. They shared their knowledge of the cosmos, speaking of dark matter, interdimensional travel, and the manipulation of energy in ways we could scarcely fathom. It was a humbling experience to sit in the presence of beings so far beyond our understanding, so sure of their place in the universe. And yet, amidst the grandeur of their tale, a strange feeling lingered in the air. They spoke of power, of their dominance, of their endless conquests. But in the back of my mind, a question began to form, one that gnawed at the edge of my thoughts. How could they be so sure of their place in the universe when they had no idea what lay beneath their feet? There was a secret here, something ancient and hidden, a piece of history that had been lost to time. They spoke of the galaxy as if it were their birthright, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, a truth that had yet to be revealed. We didn't know it then, but we were on the cusp of uncovering a revelation that would shake the foundations of everything they believed. The Syndar's first visit to Earth wasn't just a moment of wonder, it was also a moment of quiet contemplation. As the days passed, the world grew accustomed to their presence. Cities adapted quickly, organizing conferences and gatherings to facilitate communication. Delegations of scientists, politicians, and even religious leaders gathered to meet these visitors from beyond the stars, eager to learn from them. At first, it felt like a dream. The air seemed charged with anticipation, as if the very world was holding its breath, waiting for the next great step in human evolution. The Syndar were patient, their leaders speaking in carefully measured tones, never hasty, always composed. They were the embodiment of grace and wisdom, seemingly unaffected by our world's complexities. The more we learned about them, the more awe and trepidation mingled in our hearts. Their technology was beyond comprehension, their knowledge far more advanced than anything we had even dreamed of. But they were not unkind. They shared their understanding of the universe, guiding us through their history and their achievements. In return, we offered them our knowledge, our art, and our culture, though we were careful not to show too much. We weren't foolish enough to reveal our vulnerabilities. As the first official meeting began, the Syndar showed us the depths of their wisdom. They spoke of the vastness of the universe, of star systems far older than Earth itself. Their stories were rich with imagery, recounting the rise and fall of civilizations that spanned millennia. They told us of how their people had overcome every challenge, evolving into the most powerful race in the galaxy. Yet, despite their omnipotence, they never boasted. There was something almost sorrowful in their tales, as if they were weighed down by the burden of eons of knowledge. They spoke of surviving great wars and witnessing the destruction of entire worlds. They had learned, they claimed, that true power came from knowledge and wisdom, not violence. But their words were not without a certain degree of superiority. They referred to us, as they had in the beginning, as a primitive species not out of malice, but because it was the truth as they saw it. They marveled at our accomplishments, but they could not understand our desire to explore, to reach beyond our limited scope. The Syndar believed in stability, in the preservation of the status quo. Their civilization, they said, had been shaped by the desire to avoid conflict, to keep everything in balance. In contrast, humanity thrived on chaos, on exploration, on pushing the limits of the possible. We had yet to fully understand the dangers of such ambition, but the Syndar were convinced that it was a path that would ultimately lead to destruction. We were too young, too wild, they said. We needed their guidance to mature. But even as they spoke, there was something beneath the surface that began to unsettle me. A nagging thought, like a distant whisper. They spoke of having traveled through countless star systems, of meeting many species, and yet they seemed to be entirely unaware of a key fact about Earth's history, about our own potential. They spoke of the vastness of time, of their understanding of ancient civilizations, but they seemed entirely unaware of the fact that the Earth itself might have once been the cradle of something far older and more advanced than anything they had encountered. How could they be so sure of their own history when they knew so little about ours? The Syndar shared with us their greatest discovery, a relic, a gift from their ancestors, which had allowed them to reach the pinnacle of their power. This artifact, they explained, was the key to unlocking their deepest knowledge and the reason they had achieved their dominance across the stars. But despite their reverence for the artifact, I could not help but wonder how could they have achieved all of this without realizing that the answers they sought had been with us all along, buried beneath the surface of our own world. It was in that moment, as I stood there listening to their stories, that the unsettling truth began to surface. The Syndar had traveled across the stars, encountered many races, and gathered vast amounts of knowledge, but they had missed something vital. They had missed the key to their own origins. And it was only a matter of time before they realized it too late, perhaps to understand just how far their understanding had fallen short. It was then that I began to suspect that the true story of humanity was something far more profound than they or we had ever imagined. In the days following the Syndar's arrival, life on Earth settled into an odd rhythm. The excitement and awe surrounding the initial contact slowly gave way to a more measured curiosity. Humans, ever adaptable, sought to learn from the visitors, while the Syndar observed us with an air of detached interest, their cold eyes scanning everything, analyzing us as if we were just another specimen in a vast galactic zoo. For the most part, everything was cordial. They offered their knowledge, and we offered ours in return, though we were careful about what we revealed. But there were moments, fleeting ones, when something felt wrong. It wasn't obvious at first. It was more of a nagging suspicion, a sense that the Syndar's story was incomplete, that they were hiding something. The more I listened to their tales of interstellar conquests, of ancient empires that had risen and fallen, the more I began to wonder, could they truly be the most ancient civilization in the galaxy? How could they, with all their knowledge, overlook something so fundamental about the very world they had chosen to visit? That question began to haunt me. It wasn't until a group of archaeologists uncovered an ancient structure deep beneath the surface of the Earth that the first crack in the Syndar's story appeared. At first it seemed like a routine discovery, something minor and insignificant. A forgotten city, buried in the dust of time. But as the team dug deeper, their excitement grew. What they uncovered was far more than just another lost civilization. It was something that challenged everything the Syndar had told us. The ruins were unlike anything the world had ever seen. The architecture was sophisticated, far beyond anything the Syndar had ever shown us. It wasn't just the design or the sheer scale of the structures, it was the technology embedded within the walls. Devices, tools, and artifacts that, while primitive by Syndar standards, were unmistakably advanced for their time. The markings on the walls were unfamiliar, but there was a resonance to them, something that spoke to the very core of human understanding. These weren't just ancient relics, they were messages, meant to be deciphered. The more they unearthed, the more it became clear humanity had once been far more advanced than we had ever realized. We had reached heights that, to the Syndar, seemed impossible. The artifacts weren't merely remnants of a lost civilization, they were keys to a past we had forgotten, a past that had been deliberately erased. It was the language on the walls that provided the first real clue. As the team began to decode it, they realized the symbols were not just the work of an unknown civilization. They were an echo of something far older, something familiar. They were identical to the symbols found in Syndar archives, symbols that the Syndar had believed to be part of their own history, their own legacy. The truth, hidden in plain sight, began to reveal itself. The Syndar had told us of their ancestors, of a race that had spread across the galaxy, claiming dominion over countless star systems. But what they had never told us was that their ancestors weren't the first to reach the stars. They weren't even the first intelligent species to arise. The truth, buried beneath layers of time and memory, was that humanity, we were the original elder species of the galaxy. It wasn't just that we had been the first to achieve space travel, we had once been the architects of entire star systems, the creators of technologies that the Syndar could only dream of. Our civilization had shaped the galaxy long before the Syndar had even taken their first steps toward space. We had built monuments on worlds that no longer existed, had manipulated stars and forged planets in ways that the Syndar couldn't comprehend. As the discovery spread, there was a ripple of disbelief and wonder. The Syndar, for all their supposed knowledge, had never once mentioned this. They had never acknowledged the fact that humanity, in its distant past, had been the true architects of the galaxy. They had come to Earth, confident in their superiority, believing they were the oldest and most advanced civilization. But now, the truth was coming to light. And as it did, the Syndar began to tremble. Their arrogance, once so apparent, began to falter. The excavation of the ancient city wasn't just a discovery, it was a revelation. The Syndar had been blind to their own origins. They had come to Earth expecting to find a young, primitive species to guide. But what they had found instead was the truth about their own past, one that would forever change the way they saw the universe and humanity's place in it. The truth, once unearthed, spread like wildfire. At first, it was contained within the scientific community, shared in hushed whispers, under the careful protection of the most secure facilities. But as more was revealed, as the artifacts and ancient technology continued to be uncovered, the information began to seep into the public eye. Earth's history was not the young, fragmented story we had long believed. No, it was something far more complex, far more ancient. We had not simply been a species rising from the ashes of forgotten empires, we had once been the architects of them. The Syndar, for all their knowledge, had never seen it coming. They had arrived with their ships and their towering figures, their arrogance masked beneath the veneer of benevolence, eager to offer us their wisdom. They believed they were the true masters of the galaxy, their ancient history stretching across the stars like an unbroken thread. But what they didn't know, what they could never have known, was that their story wasn't the first. Humanity had been here long before they even dreamed of the stars. The symbols on the walls of the ancient city, the forgotten language, it all painted a picture of a civilization that had soared higher, reached farther, and achieved more than even the Syndar could comprehend. The moment the first archaeologists began to understand the magnitude of the discovery, everything changed. We had always thought of ourselves as latecomers to the galactic stage, struggling to catch up with the great empires of the universe. The Syndar had played their part in reinforcing this notion, regaling us with tales of their stellar conquests, their ancient wisdom, and their cosmic reign. But as our scholars decoded the ancient scripts, as they studied the remnants of technology that had been lost to the ages, it became clear humanity had been the progenitors of this knowledge. We had given rise to the very technologies that the Syndar had claimed as their own. The Syndar, initially pleased by the revelations, soon began to show cracks in their perfect facade. They had believed they were the apex of creation, the ultimate evolution of the universe. Yet, the more they studied the artifacts we had uncovered, the more their pride faltered. Their history was built on a lie. They had assumed that their ancient predecessors were the true pioneers of the galaxy, the ones who had first unlocked the secrets of space and time. But the artifacts told a different story, one in which the Syndar were not the first, but the inheritors of a much older legacy. The civilization that had constructed the foundations of the Syndar's power was long gone, lost to time, and its creators were we humanity. This realization sent ripples through their ranks. For millennia, the Syndar had assumed they were the oldest, the wisest, the most advanced race in the galaxy. They had seen themselves as the shepherds of lesser species, guiding them, offering their superior knowledge to those who had not yet learned the ways of the cosmos. But they had failed to recognize their own origin. They had not been the creators of this knowledge. No, they had been students, inheritors of a grand legacy that predated their own rise. And in that moment, everything they believed about themselves began to unravel. Humanity, once viewed as a nascent species, now stood at the forefront of a revelation that would alter the balance of the galaxy. We were not merely a species clawing its way out of the dirt. We were the original architects of civilization, the first to chart the stars and shape the fabric of the universe. We had unlocked the secrets of the cosmos long before the Syndar had even discovered how to manipulate the stars. Our past, lost to time, had once given birth to the very foundations of galactic knowledge. The Syndar, with all their advanced technology and cosmic influence, were now faced with a question they had never considered: how could they be the rulers of the galaxy if they had never truly understood their own origins? How could they claim to be the masters of the stars when they had forgotten the hands that had once shaped the very stars they now controlled? Their arrogance had been their undoing. The Syndar had come to Earth expecting to find a species to guide, a species to elevate. But what they had found instead was the truth that would shatter their sense of superiority. Humanity was not just another young civilization. We were the original elder race of the galaxy, the true masters of the stars. The galaxy had never known a more ancient, more powerful species than humanity until we had fallen into the obscurity of time. And now, with the truth revealed, it was only a matter of time before the Syndar would have to face the full weight of their ignorance. They had underestimated us, and the consequences of that mistake were just beginning to unfold. As the revelations about humanity's ancient past spread, the atmosphere on Earth began to shift. The Syndar, once so poised and confident in their superiority, now found themselves rattled, their carefully constructed narrative of galactic dominance cracking beneath the weight of truth. They had arrived on Earth expecting to impart wisdom, to guide a young and inexperienced species into the fold of the galaxy's cosmic order. Instead, they were confronted with the fact that humanity had been there first, had built the very foundations of the galactic knowledge they so proudly claimed. The galaxy that the Syndar thought they ruled, that they believed was their domain, was now shown to have been shaped by humanity long before their ancestors had ever set foot on a distant planet. For the first time, the Syndar began to show cracks in their calm, measured demeanor. Their leaders, once serene and composed, were seen in private, conferring urgently with one another, their voices low and filled with a sense of panic. The public, however, was not privy to these conversations. The Syndar continued to maintain their facade of benevolence, of offering guidance to the people of Earth. But their words, once filled with the confidence of ancient beings who had conquered the cosmos, now seemed strained, as if they were desperately trying to keep control of the narrative. The human world, meanwhile, was in turmoil. While some believed that the discovery of humanity's ancient role as the original architects of the galaxy was a cause for celebration, others felt a deep unease. Had we, too, been on the brink of collapse when the Syndar first arrived, their quiet intervention ensuring that we remained the younger, more malleable species? Could it be that we had, in some way, lost the knowledge of our true origins? As new discoveries about humanity's forgotten history continued to surface, the question became clear: how could a species, once so advanced, fall so far into obscurity? And more troubling still, what would happen if the Syndar decided to erase this knowledge once again? The Syndar, of course, did not take this revelation lightly. Their quiet panic soon turned into action. Within weeks, several high-ranking Syndar officials began to disappear. At first, it seemed like an anomaly, a coincidence perhaps. But soon the pattern became undeniable. High-ranking diplomats, scientists, and even some of their most senior leaders, those who had known of humanity's true role in galactic history, began to vanish. Rumors swirled that the Syndar were engaged in some kind of covert operation, one designed to suppress the knowledge of our ancient civilization. They feared that humanity's rediscovery of its power and legacy would upset the delicate balance of the galaxy that the Syndar had carefully crafted over millennia. As the Syndar's disappearance intensified, some of Earth's leading scholars took matters into their own hands. A secret coalition of scientists, archaeologists, and even some former military leaders began to work together in an effort to preserve the knowledge they had uncovered. They realized that the Syndar were not merely seeking to guide humanity, as they had originally claimed. They were desperate to control the narrative, to prevent us from understanding the truth of our own origins. They feared that if humanity knew the full extent of its ancient power, we would rise again, perhaps even overthrow the Syndar's carefully constructed empire. In private meetings, these human leaders discussed the potential consequences of confronting the Syndar. If the Syndar, in their panic, were willing to suppress the truth of our past, would they go so far as to silence those who had discovered it? And what of the rest of the galaxy? What would the Syndar do if they were forced to acknowledge that humanity was no longer the underdog, the naive species that they had hoped to control? The decision was made. Humanity would no longer be passive. The scholars and their allies began to rally support, spreading the truth about our ancient civilization, about the vast knowledge and power we had once wielded. They began to map out a plan, one that involved reclaiming the ancient technologies hidden beneath the Earth's surface, technologies that, once restored, could give humanity the power to shape the galaxy once again. The Syndar, unaware of the growing resistance, continued to try and maintain their control. But the tides had already begun to shift. The galaxy that they had once believed was theirs to rule was now a battleground, and humanity, once seen as a primitive species, was rising to reclaim its rightful place as the true elder species of the stars. The galaxy, it seemed, was about to learn a new truth. The Syndar were not the first to rise to power. They were merely the inheritors of a legacy that had been forgotten until now. And soon, they would find out that the humans they had sought to control were far more than they could ever have imagined. The struggle to preserve humanity's ancient legacy was not going to be won through mere knowledge alone. It became evident to the growing coalition of scholars, activists, and ex-military leaders that the Syndar's influence had spread far too deeply, not just within the corridors of power on Earth, but across the galaxy. The Syndar had built a vast web of alliances, covert operations, and advanced surveillance systems, which allowed them to control entire star systems. Their grip on galactic politics and technology seemed unshakable. But as humanity's ancient power began to resurface, so did a new, undeniable resolve: we would no longer be passive observers in the galaxy. We would reclaim our place among the stars. The first steps were taken in secret. The human resistance, still small but growing rapidly, began to form a shadow government, one that operated behind closed doors, away from the prying eyes of the Syndar. Members of this new faction were drawn from every corner of society: intelligent scientists who had deciphered the ancient scripts, military tacticians who understood the power dynamics of the galaxy, and engineers who had started to reverse engineer the ancient technologies discovered beneath the Earth's surface. Slowly, they began to amass the tools and knowledge to fight back. Humanity's ancient tech, once thought to be lost forever, was now being rediscovered piece by piece. The excavation of the underground cities had unearthed more than just artifacts. There were functional devices that defied the Syndar's understanding of physics and technology. Among these devices was a propulsion system capable of achieving interstellar travel far beyond the capabilities of the Syndar's most advanced ships. But it wasn't just the technology that was revolutionary, it was the power source hidden deep within these relics. The Syndar had long assumed that the only way to sustain such power was through matter manipulation and endless fuel resources. But the remnants of the ancient human civilization revealed something entirely different, a form of energy that tapped into the very fabric of space itself. The Resistance's engineers worked tirelessly, carefully reverse engineering these relics, learning how to harness their power. With each success, they inched closer to their goal. The Syndar had never considered the possibility that a species like humanity had once developed such technologies. They had assumed that their own rise to power was inevitable, and that other species, including us, would remain beneath their control. What they hadn't accounted for was the fact that the Syndar were mere successors to a much grander vision, one that humanity had once mastered. As the weeks passed, humanity's resolve strengthened. The first prototype of the new spacecraft, sleek, black, and seemingly weightless, was ready. Unlike the bulky, slow-moving ships of the Syndar, this new vessel was fast, almost imperceptibly swift, and equipped with weapons of unimaginable power. It was clear that this ship was not only a symbol of human ingenuity, it was a harbinger of a future in which humanity would no longer be subjugated. But the Resistance's growing success did not go unnoticed. The Syndar, ever vigilant, had begun to notice irregularities in their monitoring systems. There were strange signals, patterns in communications, and even a few incidents where Syndar operatives had gone missing. Slowly, they began to piece together the truth that the humans they had once underestimated were no longer content to stay in the shadows. The Syndar leadership, already racked with fear and confusion, now saw the true threat rising before them. Desperation set in within their ranks. With their hold over Earth beginning to waver, the Syndar dispatched their most elite agents, high-ranking operatives trained in both diplomacy and covert warfare, to infiltrate the Resistance. Their mission was simple: to neutralize any and all threats before humanity's resurgence became a full-blown rebellion. The Syndar could no longer afford to allow the secret of humanity's ancient dominance to spread. If humanity took control of the galactic technologies that were now within their grasp, they would not only challenge the Syndar's power, they would expose the Syndar's true place in history. They were no longer the masters of the galaxy. They were merely its stewards. The stage was set for a confrontation unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The Syndar, so confident in their dominion over the cosmos, were blindsided by the rise of humanity's ancient power. The first ship, the prototype of humanity's new fleet, was ready to take off from Earth's surface. The Syndar's agents, silently watching, were unaware that their time was running out. Earth was no longer a planet to be controlled. Humanity had awakened from its long slumber, and we were about to remind the Syndar and the galaxy who had once ruled the stars. The first strike came without warning. The Syndar, having underestimated the extent of humanity's recovery, were caught off guard when the prototype spacecraft, sleek and silent, broke free of Earth's atmosphere and slipped into the stars. The Syndar's surveillance networks, once foolproof, were not equipped to detect the advanced cloaking technologies that humanity had now mastered. The ship, now fully operational, had been designed not just for stealth, but for speed and precision. With its newly developed propulsion system, it accelerated through space faster than the Syndar's own ships could track, and it carried with it the symbol of humanity's newfound strength. As the first ship made its way toward the Syndar's closest outposts, the Resistance knew that they were not merely initiating an attack, they were reclaiming their birthright. The galaxy that had been taken from them so long ago was about to be restored. Their first target was a Syndar-controlled mining colony in the Outer Rim, a site rich in resources that the Syndar had been extracting for centuries. The colony was a symbol of their dominance, a reminder to all who might consider defying the Syndar that they held the power to manipulate entire worlds. The Resistance ship, powered by the ancient energy source humanity had once harnessed, moved in without a single shot fired. It was equipped with the ability to disrupt the Syndar's communication systems, rendering their defensive networks useless. Within moments, the Syndar's stronghold fell into chaos. The colony's energy grids were disabled, their weapon systems neutralized, and their leaders were captured with alarming efficiency. It was a message, a declaration of humanity's return to power. The Syndar, realizing the full extent of their failure, scrambled to organize a response. They sent ships from the nearby systems, but it was too late. Humanity had already made its move, and the speed with which they acted caught the Syndar entirely off guard. The galaxy, long under the Syndar's oppressive rule, was now faced with an insurgency that had once been thought impossible. But even as the Syndar mobilized their forces, they knew they could not afford to underestimate humanity any longer. Their arrogance had cost them. The ships they sent were vast and powerful, but they were not designed for the kind of guerrilla warfare that humanity now specialized in. The Syndar were accustomed to large-scale battles, to overwhelming firepower, but they were not prepared for the precision strikes, the swiftness, and the ingenuity that humanity had reclaimed from its forgotten past. It wasn't long before the Syndar leaders realized their position was untenable. Their grip on the galaxy was slipping, and the resistance had become something far larger than they could control. Humanity had not only reclaimed their ancient technologies but had evolved, adapting them into something new, a combination of the old and the new that made humanity's forces unpredictable and nearly unstoppable. The Syndar's final attempt to crush the resistance came in the form of a direct assault on Earth itself. Their massive fleets arrived in the inner solar system, preparing to strike at the heart of humanity. But humanity was no longer the untested species the Syndar had encountered years earlier. The fleet of advanced ships that now flew under Earth's flag, equipped with the same stealth technologies and ancient energy sources, was more than ready. Earth's defenses were a blend of ancient technology and modern ingenuity, a fusion that no one, least of all the Syndar, had anticipated. The battle that ensued was unlike any other. It wasn't a war fought on a single front, but one waged across multiple star systems, with humanity's forces striking from unexpected angles, outwitting and outmaneuvering the Syndar at every turn. The Syndar, despite their superior numbers, could not match humanity's unpredictability, nor could they grasp the full extent of the ancient technologies humanity now controlled. In the final confrontation, humanity didn't just fight to defend Earth, they fought to reclaim the galaxy, to restore what was once theirs. The Syndar's fleets were shattered, their command structure in disarray. And as their last ships retreated, the message became clear: humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated. They were the original elder race of the stars, and the galaxy would soon know that Earth's long-forgotten legacy had only just begun to awaken. The Syndar's dominance had ended, and with it, humanity stepped into the galaxy's true place as its rightful rulers, not through brute force or sheer numbers, but through the knowledge of the ancient past, a strength that no alien species could ever rival. The galaxy had been reshaped, and humanity had reclaimed its birthright,